Hello everyone, I am Tacit and welcome to the last week of Campaign 6 for Gems of War. So today we're going to be going over everything with the 5.7 patch notes as well as the Gems of War Wish Upon a Star event in which a Lady Estelle is added to the game. So first things first, we had the 5.7 patch, I believe last Tuesday. It was a relatively small patch. It mostly just did some future proofing, like for, new heroic gems, some features, some kind of Halloween event that we're going to be having pretty soon, some bug fixes, like potions finally being fixed after like the second to last week of the event. However, there is one thing that was actually substantial and immediate as far as what it changed, and it is how daily deals work. So you may have noticed some new offers kind of appear. Well, one new offer mostly, well technically four, depending on how you look at it. But they made some changes to how offers work, both through Arena and your three daily offers. There was three main changes. The one, and probably most noteworthy one, is the one you're looking at right now. It is now possible to get the 4 verses via your daily offers as well as the 3 daily Arena. This is by far the most useful thing that you could really get from it, because of course a single full Nomapalooza is a lot of loot on average, like what, at minimum like 15 vault keys and epic vault key on average, approximately. Somewhere around there. It's really solid loot to get all 4. One pretty nice thing about this too is they're only 50 gems, so very cheap, and if you're doing it through Arena, they're 5 cheaper, or doing it 10% cheaper, and through this they're 25% if you get it on this whole final thing. I think it was like 37 or something, though of course it doesn't matter because even at 50 it is still auto buy every single time, and you already know which verse you're going to be getting to. So if you know you have a lot of verse like 4, for example, let's say you have like 30 more verse 4 compared to like your lowest one, you might not necessarily want to get it, whereas if it's like verse 2, which is my current lowest, then we definitely want to make sure we end up getting it, because that's basically a full Nomapalooza then. But yeah, this is a pretty substantial change, as now we will more accessibly be able to passively obtain verses prior to a vault event in order to throw even more Nomapaloozas than normal. This is technically a buff to Nomapalooza, which is a nice change after they nerfed it a billion times in a row. This was the first buff that they technically did, even though it doesn't necessarily change the Nomapalooza itself. It makes accessibility to it and having more of them to use when a vault event rolls around to be more a higher number. But anyways, aside from that, they made 2 other small adjustments. The other one is it is now a higher chance to find deeds, writs, and imperials, with the most relevant thing of those being imperials, but all 3 of them are now just a higher rate whenever you do it through Arena or through your daily offers. And the third is medals. Medals will occur at a higher rate if and only if you currently need it for a kingdom. So of course there's the 5 bronze ones that we've been needing for some kingdoms. Eventually we're going to have a 10 silver, and way down the line we're going to need a 15 gold and 20 gold as far as how many medals on troops that we have within a kingdom in order to get kingdom progress. During those times when you need any of them to be upgraded, you will have a higher chance of finding these tokens. So it is a really good idea, since these offers are mostly bad for the most part, unless you happen to get like an Anu. It's sometimes worth getting an Anu if you get off the VIP thingy, but most of them you generally don't want to be doing. You get better value just from kind of throwing some into Ward Event and other stuff. It's not normally worth it. But one thing that you definitely want to check on if you have really high star kingdoms is any kingdom that you have at 23 star, make sure and double check that you 100% have the, oh sorry, it's not 23 star, it's 21 star if I'm not mistaken, my bad. Wrong number. So at 21 star, going into 22, so check every 21 star kingdom you have or anything getting near. Upgrade 5 troops from the kingdom to elite level bronze. Make sure you have this done in every possible instance that you have of any kingdom. Double check every single one has that one little gold star at 21 star, because if you have even this single one of these not done, it will increase your chance of finding medals. And if you don't want to buy any medals, then that will be getting in the way of many other loots that you could potentially be getting. So do be wary of that, as they did adjust it to be slightly more frequent, not sure by how much, but more frequent than normal, if you happen to have even a single kingdom not having that one objective. Even if it's impossible to get it otherwise, like of course this one we have it and it's still impossible, it will still end up increasing your offer if you don't have it done, so be wary of that. But anyways, that's pretty much it. We got a Halloween event coming in soon, and we'll see some bug fixes. So, as far as other stuff that we got going on, so of course, Wish Upon a Star event. As far as the new troop, we got one that's basically like Lady or Ariel. stock up on red yellow arcanes if you want. It's cheapest you can get them, 200 each. So as far as this troop, finally not a potion troop, that's nice. But this one ends up creating, it's basically Lady or an Ariel, but for different colors. It even has Lady in its name, Lady Estelle. It creates 8 green and 8 red. Lady and Ariel, I believe, is green and blue. Similar to Lady and Ariel, one of the 2 colors does feed back into herself, in this case, the red, and ends up giving a bunch of magic to all allies, all Bright Forest allies specifically. Overall, it's kind of meh. Not really something you're going to be doing, kind of restricted, similar to Lady or Ariel. It's almost never going to get used. Even Lady or Ariel, at least somewhat useful, because it kind of has a little bit of a Noxia synergy and stuff like that. But overall, I feel like similar to Lady or Ariel, it's just not going to be viable. It doesn't have Empower, has a little bit of like that Storm going for it, but otherwise its traits are pretty underwhelming. This one of those troops that is a utility troop that just doesn't really do the role good enough compared to other options within the game, and is likely just not going to be used because of that, which is rather unfortunate. Aside from that, we do have a interesting event key drop table this week. So of course, one thing to be mindful is this is the final week of the campaign, so the new campaign mythic is not in the event key drop table. Going forward, any Bright Forest event we have will have it in a drop table. However, this one specifically does not have any chance of getting the where'd it go? The Fountain of Stars. Am I blind? Where's the Fountain of Stars? There it is. So Fountain of Stars, of course, came in last Monday. We ended up going over it some. Still haven't covered a video on it, but we'll probably have that up either later today or tomorrow, going over some teams with Fountain of Stars, as well as messing with it on stream, like we already have some. But basically, it converts 5 green gems to purple, and then all browns to, into purple potions, and then all browns to skulls. There's some pretty interesting things you could do with this, given that it is the first converter of potions. While it's not all, it still does a pretty hefty amount. There's a little bit of bless and some skull reduction and everything. You can get that from the season pass, and do make sure to finish that season pass, because this is the last week you have. After 1 week from today, as soon as the end of Sunday, you will not be able to get this for a little bit of time, so do be wary of that. But basically, he is not in the event key drop table right now, so do be wary of that. Next Bright Forest event it will be. Currently, it is not. So the 6 things that are not available is the Fountain of Stars, the Doom of Nature, and the 4 troops from Sunken Fleets. All 6 of those are not available. However, everything else you see here is. One extremely noteworthy thing, if you are a newer player who just started within the last month or so, or anyone who does not own a Leprechaun, go open every event key you have until you get a Leprechaun, because it is just so ridiculously good. If you need more, I don't normally mention it, but because I sometimes already take it before the video starts. But don't forget, 1,800 glory every week is for basically 10 free event keys. This used to be infinitely buyable. It's limited to 10 per week these days. I highly advise getting every 10 every single week. It kind of disappears after you get it, though. Oh, apparently it didn't now. I think you have to go out of the shop, and then it disappears. But make sure to get that. It's 10 event keys for pretty much free every single week, so good to get that. But anyways, as far as the troops and everything, there's a few really good ones that you do want to make sure you have in your arsenal if you don't already. The main one being Leprechaun. Leprechaun is one of those like low rarity troops that's essential for almost every team in the game. It's like top 10. It is so ridiculously good for everything. And it's low rarity, so it's normally pretty accessible. However, there's no way to normally target it. However, this week, because of event keys, you can target Leprechaun directly, so if you don't currently have it or you just want more copies, definitely a good time to go and do so, as it is a pretty vital team or troop for pretty much any team. There is literally no team in existence where this technically would not benefit it. Normally there's sometimes better options, but every team wouldn't hate having a Leprechaun. It is just so good. Next one that's pretty relevant is Queen Titania. Queen Titania is arguably one of the strongest legends in the entire game. Has a lot of things going for it, as far as damage output anyways. Deals a lot of damage to all enemies, has a really amazing boost ratio, so if you pick it up early, it's even stronger. And even into later into the game, its boost ratio is just so strong that it's getting so much extra damage. Plus, it has scaling damage because of Fairy Fire for the extra 50%. So as that, it has a potential of gaining automatic extra turn. And while these 13 ones tend to be a little bit hard to do it for, most teams that she gets used in have so much red spam that she normally can get away with extra turn. And even though this condition is normally annoying to hit, on most of the compositions she's used on, like Yagwe, Queen Titania, and similar, tend to have enough red creation that she doesn't normally mind the fact that it's that high of a restriction. And of course, Fairy Fire. Fairy Fire, there's aren't too many really extremely viable ways of applying it, but it allows you to do 50% more damage off a spell and she does that off of everything. She also counts as a mage, so she has one of the best values of any legend in the entire game for being fully metaled. It's kind of like a Phoenicia or Scourge kind of upgrade as far as a legend is concerned, instead of on a mythic, because she ends up getting pure magic, and it just scales very well, because she gets 50% extra technically from all the magic she gains due to her Fairy Fire, and just an absolutely insane troop. Definitely make sure you do not leave this week without it if you can help it. And it is a legendary, so it is a bit more accessible. Aside from that, Child of Summer, this is used mostly for Yagoi Queen Titania teams. However, there are some brown counter teams that also end up using it because it ends up converting brown to red, which can be pretty useful. It also has a storm attached to it, which if I'm not mistaken is the only Empower that has a color convert into a storm of its exact color that it converts into. I'm pretty sure this is the only instance of it in the game. It might be a blue version, if I'm not mistaken, actually. But it's one of the only few, if not the only one, that specifically has a color convert into the storm itself. So very powerful, and obviously really great with the Yagoi Queen Titania, as well as any team that wants to have a lot of red. And those are pretty much like the main pickups. Also for this Friday, you're going to need the invasion troop here too. Oh, never mind, that's from Stryx. Never mind, wrong kingdom. Never mind. But yeah, those three are definitely the ones you want to make sure you have before the end of this week, if you don't already. Leprechaun, Queen of Tanya, and Child of Summer. Just so many good compositions, and two of those already synergized together, Child of Summer and Queen Titania. Aside from that, mythics are pretty underwhelming here. The best mythic is the one from the Season Pass, however, it is not accessible in event keys, at least not this week. Next Bright Forest event it will be, this Bright Forest event is not. So as far as mythics are concerned, I probably wouldn't really bother until the next Bright Forest event rolls back around, because at least then, if you happen to not have this mythic, you can end up going for it then. Because Suna and Vernalis, they're both pretty underwhelming mythics for the most part, so probably a good week to skip and mostly just get the lower good utilities, and just make sure you have those three troops then. Anyways, so that's event keys. As far as other things that we got going on, we do have the final week of the World event. As far as the rooms, it is nice and simple, just seems to be rarity order, so should be good to go. Aside from that, it is a Bright Forest restriction, which does give you options to quite a few decent ones. Ideally, what you want to be using is Queen Titania. You want to build entirely around Queen Titania if you have a copy of Queen Titania. If you don't have a copy of Queen Titania, you probably want to try getting Queen Titania before the end of this week. So pretty much every composition is going to be like a Leprechaun, Queen Titania, or Summer, Queen Titania, or literally anything Queen Titania is generally what you're going to want to build into, assuming you have Queen Titania as far as what you're going to want to do for the build there. And we do have access to both spell and skulls, so if you really want to, you can throw a Mirage Queen in there, since it does gain the benefit from the skulls, but AoE magic's probably going to be your best way to go about it. Also, if you have Dawnbringer, Dawnbringer's a pretty good option underneath weapon, it is specifically Bright Forest weapons. However, the two main noteworthy ones from there is Dawnbringer, which is all enemies, and Trickster Shot, which tears all of their armor and gives you a bunch of magic based on that. And if you still wanted to run an AoE but needed something cheaper, you could technically go Summer's Fury, though ideally Dawnbringer would be a much better advantageous option. But you could go either or if you need a cheaper option for the battles there. Anyways, aside from that, we do have a few other things going on. This Tuesday we have the Sunken Fleet faction. Wednesday we're going to be having the Cat Sif, which if I'm not mistaken is Bright Forest bonus. Thursday we have the Hierophant hero class, which I feel like is a little bit of an overlooked hero class. It's used very, very situationally. The main gimmick that it has is the only hero class that has both cleanse and triple damage burning on one single hero class. This is pretty beneficial as first slot because you have basically immune to entangle, immune to freeze, and can kind of skull spam without needing to worry about hindrance as long as you don't get stunned. So it does have that going for it, which is a rather unique aspect, unique only to this hero class. Generally, other triple damage burning hero classes are better than it, but it's one of those situations where if you know the enemy has a billion things, or that hero class that has both freeze burn, there's two of them, Pride Hunter and Frost Mage that have it. I know there was one other one that had like a similar mechanic, but yeah, there's those entangle freezes, and it's a great way to kind of counter those out, or really any team that ends up spamming it a lot. And this Friday we have invasions for Stryx, so if you end up having Nimbus Bow, that would end up going pretty well, though it's definitely not required. Just the invasion troops enough, similar to every invasion event, is pretty much enough to tear it apart. Aside from that, as far as some Soulforge things that we have going on, as far as troops are concerned, oddly enough, Suna is both in Event Key Drop Table and in Soulforge, not relevant at all, followed by another useless mythic, followed by another useless mythic. Wait, I missed one. Where's the fourth useless mythic? Hold up. Am I blind? Let's see. There's 1 useless mythic, 2 useless mythics, 3 useless mythics, oh, 4 useless mythics. Famine actually probably is the best out of all of them, but because he's Apocalypse and not associated to a kingdom, you generally don't really want to get him. Even though he's technically the best of these 4, he's not associated to a kingdom, so you don't use him for kingdom upgrading purposes. So I'd probably just ignore everything in Soulforge then. Also, you might notice we didn't get a new troop. So it does look like they're going to play a little bit of like a Hatter and Scroll kind of thing, where the current tarot card that was from this event is not actually going to be used immediately, which is kind of more beneficial for free-to-play players, because they'll be able to go and actually obtain it before it does have a drop. But it looks like they're going to do something similar into the future, where the current season one, like what happened to the Sun, where the current season was not used for anything, for the current tarot card, and then at a future season it will end up getting used for something, whereas currently the season pass tarot card does not get used for anything until a future event. Aside from that, as far as weapons, there are definitely a handful of options that are worth considering. I would say the main one is probably going to be Trickster Shot though. Trickster Shot is basically Mang for magic, very situational. It's normally a bit slow just because you generally want to be killing everything at once with like an AoE option in many situations. However, it's basically a magic-based Mang. It eliminates all armor from an enemy, and then deals damage, which is basically true damage, and then gains a bunch of magic boosted by armor eliminated. So this basically gives you 1 billion armor, because let's say they have 100 armor, you just got 33 additional magic, or technically 35, because it's 2 plus whatever the boost ratio is. So you would have gotten 35 magic from that, and that stacks onto what you already have, so in this case it would be up to 75. And yeah, that's pretty substantial amount of damage. You're doing the armor tier, so by that point, generally once you get 1 Trickster Shot down, definitely once you get 2 Trickster Shots down, you'll be one-shotting absolutely everything. And in this current event, it's pretty relevant too because you have so much extra spell damage, so you will end up being able to get those one-shots. It's a bit of a situational weapon. I do feel like Mang's used a lot more, especially because you can barrier Brown. Not that you can't do it with this, but of course Brown does not feed directly into the weapon. But it's a good weapon, very situational, but it's basically magic-based Mang. Highly advise having in your arsenal because there are situations where it can be pretty useful, including this week, so you can at least use it for that if nothing else. Aside from that, Fairy Ring's not horrible. It's boosted based on Fae. Most noteworthy thing about this, oddly enough, is Frost Mage counts as Fae. So there's some things that you can do with Frost Mage with this, where you feed a bunch of green and purple to your team, and there's quite a few really heavy damaging Faes, like Queen of Tanya and such. So it's somewhat usable. Definitely not the best of the typings, though definitely on the better half of all these double typing weapons. It's definitely not like one of the top few, but it's definitely in the better half of them, so it is potentially worth considering, as there are some pretty decent Fae options. If I'm not mistaken, there's also 2 Fae hero classes, Frost Mage and Hierophant, though generally you're using it with Frost Mage, even though it's from a Bright Forest weapon, oddly enough, but it's normally more paired with the Frost Mage hero class. Anyways, one other thing, which they technically didn't do yet, though they said they were going to this Monday. Maybe it'll happen a little bit later this week, so if you're wondering why it's changed all of a sudden, if you happen to be running these troops will be changed to their original traits. This was one thing that was fixed in the most recent patch. However, based on the game right now, unless it's just visually showing it incorrectly, they have not actually been changed yet. But all 4 of these basically got nerfed, kind of. Basically what will happen now, it doesn't show it yet, but probably will happen later this week, probably in the next day or two, is this trait will be transformed into all 3 of these. Instead of having their little dragon bonds, they'll end up creating 1 skull at a 50% chance at the start of every turn, I believe it is. And this one will end up creating 2 skulls at the start of every turn at 100% rate. And will no longer have the 50% mana start, which is kind of unfortunate, because this thing was actually better than the other 50% mana start troop, which is kind of funny. Which also, I believe the other 50% mana start troop is in Soulforge this week, Essentia. So that's kind of funny. But yeah, if you're using this currently for 50% Dragon Mana Start, do be mindful that it's probably being changed in the next day or two, and we'll no longer have that 50% Mana Start, and instead we'll have a 2 skull creation. This will probably lead to some really weird cheese teams where you can run 3 of this guy with like a Wrath or something else that really needs skulls in first slot. I don't really think it's going to be particularly meta, though there's probably some really funny things you could end up doing with it, but ultimately will be a nerf to the troop, so do be wary of that if you happen to be using him for that purpose, as he's theoretically getting nerfed sometime this week, most likely. And aside from that, even though we have made mention of it, don't forget this is the absolute final week to finish out the campaign. So if you want to go get the Fountain of Stars or the Tarot card, which apparently won't be useful for a little while, as well as the Power Orb if you bought the Extended Pass, make sure to do that, because Sunday, end of Sunday of this week, is the very last day that you will be able to go and get it done. So make sure to do so. You have 6.5 days pretty much by the time this video goes up. So make sure to get on that and get all the juicy loots, especially if you paid for either of the two passes. Aside from that, if you're going free, I believe you only really have to get to 850, if I'm not mistaken. Though you can go all the way, there's still some extra loot, but I believe only 850 free to play has to go to. It's where the last deep book is where you really want to make sure you hit, yeah, 850. Though if you're that far, you might as well just go all the way anyways. But 850 is where you need to go for free to play, 1000 is where you need to go for normal pass, and 1200 is where you need to go for the bigger paid pass. Anyways, aside from that, let's go over a bunch of teams. As per usual, they will be in the description below if you want to go and copy-paste any of them. So, from the start, the World Event team. A couple different ways you can run this. This one is going with Fairy Ring. It's a double Queen Titania. Summers is here for the convert. You can use Leprechaun and go down the Leprechaun route as well. I figured I'd just go with Child of Summer for the Red Storm. And to go into double Queen Titania, because ideally we'll just kill off of 2 Queen Titania casts. And that's pretty much the premise with this. Fairy Ring's more so for mana accumulation, though you can do a poke if they like revive or something. I can't remember if there's any kind of revive troops, but in case there is, it'll be able to go and deal with that. This one is a super cheap team. I do advise trying to put Queen Titania in this. If you have a Queen Titania, go do a Queen Titania and probably build a Queen around Queen Titania instead. However, if you happen to not have access to Queen Titania and don't have that many event keys and don't end up getting lucky enough to end up getting a copy of her, you can kind of go down the Trickster Shot route. This can end up being done just to go keep poking. If you need something even cheaper than that, if you can't afford, if you can't get Queen Titania for RNG, nor can you afford the weapon, you can go down the route of, oh yeah, you can't see it here, but Summer's Fury, the weapon we were talking about earlier. This is the absolute cheapest weapon you can end up getting away with, and you might want to revamp the team ever so slightly, but basically build around Summer's Fury then, and that would basically be your Queen Titania. So you have those options depending on how you want to go about it, though ideally you do want to build around Queen Titania if you have access to it, and if you don't, you probably want to be using event keys to get it because it's such an amazing troop. Anyways, aside from that, we have a red-blue restriction for the faction event, which is for Sunken Fleet tomorrow. Sunken Fleet, a couple different ways we can go about this. This one's kind of just a variant of a Rowan team, and just will end up clearing out through the entire thing. You could end up switching out to Urskia's Shield. I mostly have it like this because for the earlier fights, you don't want to block Angry Mob's mana because you can use that for mana accumulation. You can also go down Mirrorlift. You can also go down in Power Route. This particular instance just happens to go with Angry Mob. One nice thing about it is it does have backup resummon. So if your hero happens to die, you still have 2 troops, or you still have a full team beyond that point. As far as Pure Faction, this is another one that you can build a couple different ways depending on how you want to go about it. There are 2 main strategies. One is to spam Water Elemental like crazy and just go 1 billion Water Elementals because it hits all enemies. So going multiple of these combined with Water Link can be a pretty viable strategy. The other alternative is to go a little bit of everything. This will give you some extra stats. It also allows you to have double tank because this thing has 30% reduction to 33% reduction. So in case your Mirage Queen accidentally overshoots them and your first slot dies, well, you still have a score reduction there and you have a backup score reduction. And Drowned Sailors mostly just to feed the entire team with blue, which obviously everything except itself ends up using. So that's pretty much the premise of the team. If this doesn't work for you, to spam Water Elementals until you win, and that will probably end up working like 1 tank with like 3 Water Elementals, or 1 tank, 1 Drowned Sailor into 2 Water Elementals. Either way, we'll end up getting the job done. That's personally what I end up using when I did the Pure Faction for it, though, that particular team there. Anyways, as far as this Thursday, we have the Hierophant hero class. Again, it's a pretty good hero class, mostly used for triple damage burning while having cleanse. Very situational, extremely situational compared to the other triple damage burning options out there. However, it is unique in that it has a cleanse triple damage burning, the only hero class in the game with the combination. Aside from that, as far as doing the event, you are restricted to Fae from Bright Forest, so you can simply just go with a Queen Titania build and just use Leprechauns to feed it. You can go with pretty much any weapon. Black Manacle is probably the most accessible. You can go with Dawnbringer, you can go with Deathbringer, you can go with pretty much anything you want. Just happen to show with Black Manacle, since it makes it a little bit easier to copy paste it. And aside from that, for the invasion event this weekend, a couple different ways to go about this as well. However, like the triple finesse into Nimbus Bow, you theoretically could cheese it that way. But this is pretty standard. Put 2 invasion troops up front for the invasion event, have a mana accumulator to go feed it mana, and we have a backup mana accumulator that can also do damage. You can end up using the Stryx hero class as well. However, this one happens to use Archmages, just to end up feeding even more purple mana so that they can actually get up. Off of when Harpy Mage ideally cascades them some purple. This does end up creating a Brown Storm, which you don't end up utilizing, so you could end up adjusting somewhat for that if you want to change out weapon or something similar. However, it shouldn't really be that big a deal, because these 2 invasion troops alone will basically be carrying you all the way, so it's not really going to get that much in the way of the overall event. But anyways, guys, that will wrap it up for this video. If you still have any other questions or anything you want me to go over, definitely feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Of course, as per usual, we will be streaming tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time here on the channel. We'll probably be going over the Mythic a little bit more and messing around from there, as well as finishing out all the Chapter 10 tasks. Should have a video going over the Mythic very soon as well, either today or tomorrow. Kind of just going over a couple teams. It's a decent one. Not the strongest ones we've had, but has some interesting gimmicks that makes it at least rather unique compared to other options in the game. I do feel like a lot of the season past Mythics have been around that kind of premise, where they might not necessarily be the strongest Mythic spin in the game, but they have pretty fun premises generally that are interesting to end up building around. And even if they are barely ever used into the future, at least they have like that kind of fun premise where they can be brought out if you want like a change of pace of a certain mechanic. So they kind of have that going for them. And this Mythic's kind of along those lines, while also being one of the more viable potion methods, because of course after this week, this is the last week we have potions falling onto Sky. Unless we get some kind of like potion storm into the future, there will be no way to have naturally occurring potions like that. You'd still be able to create them onto the board, of course, with things like the fountain and other similar trips that we've been getting for every single color. However, there will be no naturally occurring ones, even though they finally fixed the glitch all the way at the end of the event. I hope that doesn't become a reoccurring thing where like the second to last week of the campaign, they finally fixed the glitch, because that happened with Lycanthropy, that happened with potions, and let's hope the next one doesn't have that problem. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching as always. Hope you have a wonderful week, and I'll catch you guys soon. Goodbye, everyone.